Hey guys, it's Lolo with Grateful Gratitude, and I am here in I hope I have this right, the Open Mic Podcast Studio, the new studio that I'm working out of. And I have we're trying to decide a new friend, an acquaintance, a friend through church. This is Jason, and Jason is joining me today to help me answer some questions that I get constantly from victims. So how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. This is actually my first ever podcast.
Oh, I'm excited that it's with me.
I know. So it's an honor. And I'm just happy to be here. And we've got some interesting questions.
Yeah.
And looking forward to dialoguing.
That's awesome. Well, you have a younger, fresher approach. And I really love the way that when you teach, you're very descriptive, and I sometimes tend to be very brief. So hopefully we can kind of mash that up and get some good answers. So I think most of my viewers know, and people who follow me, I am a one-person nonprofit that I'm out in the community. I'm a hope catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is when different agencies like police departments or other nonprofits have someone in crisis, they come to me because I've been blessed by God to have resources that we can immediately connect them without going through the regular channels of agencies that take forever.
Be exhausting.
Oh, and really when you're in crisis, we all know it being in crisis, we want it fixed now. We don't want to be told it's 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. We don't want to wait. We need clarity. We need good next steps. Yeah. Totally. Well, thank you for doing that.
Oh, yeah. It's a blessing, truly. So most of the people are either not, that I sit with that are victims, are currently not strong in their faith. Yeah. Maybe have never really understood who God is, or they may be questioning why are they in this situation.
Yeah.
So let me give you a couple examples. So, of course, worked a lot with domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
The very first case I sat with that a victim advocate brought me in on was a woman who witnessed a murder-suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And, honestly, when they called me in, I was only in this ministry for about 3 or 4 months. And all I could do is just kind of look up and say, God, are you serious? This is my first one, So anyhow, the one question that I hear very often is, why has this happened to me? Does God not love me?
Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of emotions wheeling up from that because these are real people, and I just want to say to the viewers and listeners, I think my heart breaks because you didn't ask for this. Right? This wasn't your plan. A lot of survivors of abuse, they didn't ask for it. And so my heart breaks for you in that situation, because there's one thing to say, through poor choices or through, wrong place at the wrong time. And, but there's another thing of just growing up, whether just being a kid and just unhealthy parent, an unhealthy, toxic childhood, you didn't ask for it.
Right.
But even as, someone who was in a marriage, and we're all looking for someone to love us. And when that love is betrayed, and when that love is manipulated and leveraged because of power or because of whatever it is, that's heartbreaking. And I think when we are people longing to be loved, and we try to experience in our best ways how to be loved, and we get hurt, I can have a really hard context of love. And I don't want to be loved if this is what I'm experiencing. And then when I hear people about or see people with whether it's watching movies or, watching other people fall in love, there's something weird about that. That doesn't seem real. Or what is it about me that is so unlovable? And that is so painful to hear. So first and foremost, I just want to just give voice and pause to say, I'm sorry for the abuse, and you didn't ask for it. And I hate that happened. And I want to lead with that because I do believe that is God's heart, that he leads with compassion, and he leads with grief when he sees the people who he's made not experience the love that he so longed and longs for people to experience. So does God love me? Yeah. And unfortunately, we live in a world that is sometimes really ugly. And oftentimes we might be so used to brokenness that when something really terrible happens, it's like, oh my gosh, this is, God must hate me, or God doesn't exist. But in a biblical perspective, if we look at God's story, we live in a pretty evil world with a lot of brokenness. I remember when my wife and I experienced our second miscarriage, we were crying in bed, and my wife looked at me and she just kept on saying, this is not how it's supposed to be. I think we've all experienced that in some way, shape, or form, lying in bed, driving to work or whatever it is, saying to ourselves, this is not how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And that is a great definition of the world that we live in. It's not how it's supposed to be. There is supposed to be peace and love and comfort and security, but we don't have that. So I bring that to your listeners, to your viewers, because I think to have a clearer picture of the world that we live in, that as Christians will call sinful world, that there are consequences to that, and that can lead to a lot of hurt, and betrayal and abuse. And God has an answer for it. We're leading up to Easter,
right?
And I was reflecting on this word holy. God is holy. There's a song right now that our church is singing. It's called Holy Forever. And my understanding of holy for a very long time is that God is set apart. We are sinners. God is holy. And so he's set apart from us. God is God, and there's no other gods before him. There's no other gods exist. And so we need to worship God because he's the only one. He's set apart from everything else. And I think what that has done in my understanding of God, especially as a loving God, is, man, I have to be a good person to be loved by him. Or I have to do good things so that I can earn his love, because he's set apart, because he's holy. And I know, because of what I've done, even what I think, and sometimes I can be a very angry person. So where my heart goes in a lot of anger, it's like, yeah, there's no way that God wants me. And so I've learned that actually the word holy has a better definition, and a definition that I think people in history, in church history, had a better understanding, which is devoted. God is devoted. And when you're devoted to someone or something, you select, there's a singular spotlight on that person that everything else kind of fades away, I'm a devoted Dodgers fan. I don't like the Rangers. I don't like the Astros. I don't. Right.
Fighting words.
All right, they're gonna, turn off right here,
We're
right?
done, right?
But I'm devoted to them,
Right.
and so I'm not, and God, and I'm devoted to my wife, and so does that mean that I'm not gonna interact with any other women or whatever? No, I mean I will, but there's a special love and a connection and a commitment to the ones who I'm devoted to. And God is the same. That God is a holy God, is a devoted God. God is devoted to all of us and longs for a connection for us. And how does he do that? Well, if he is so set apart, why would he become human in the form of Jesus to come to a broken world that we just talked about? And why would God, in the form of Jesus, choose to live a life of poverty when he could easily be the most powerful, richest man in that time? But no, he chose to be without much, to live a humble life, because I think there's a lot of hope when we are at our limits, to know that in our limits, when we meet the end of our rope, that there is a God who is devoted to us. And oftentimes it is there, especially in my life, where I am at the end of my rope, and that's where I meet God. And sometimes through his patience, he allows us to go through some really difficult things to get us to the end of our ropes. And that's where grace and love and compassion and his devoted desire, that's where he meets us. So does that resonate with you? Like, was there a time in your life where you were at the end of your rope? And
Oh, for sure. And I was just going to say, when I sit with, these are primarily women that I'm sitting with, and I tell them my story. Because I think that when we're in crisis and we've had something happen, we want someone to normalize it. We want to know that we're not the only one in the world that this has happened to.
Right.
So, and I know you really don't know my backstory, but my first husband was a very hard worker. He was a roofer, worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and we lived in Illinois. And one winter, there was so much snow that he didn't work for a period of time. And he started spending time in a bar, became alcoholic, then started using methamphetamine, and our life just crashed. And I had a small baby that I was protecting, and I never shared any of it with my family. I covered it all up. And, I think a lot of times when we sit with someone and they have a story that they've overcome, and they've had a triumph, and they tie it to, number one, I always tie it to gratitude, but gratitude comes from God. And corporately, if I have to speak and I speak about gratitude, I feel like I'm speaking of God, So I think the first thing is to let them know that they're not alone.
Yes.
And then to let them know that no matter how dark the walk, that God is with us.
Yes.
And I then also tell them that, just like you said, Jesus came to earth as a baby and lived for 33 years. And he, was treated poorly. I mean, he had anxiety. We know that from reading the Bible, that there were periods where he had that anxiety too, just like we do. And everything that Jesus did here on earth correlates to being a human, so that we understand that perfection went through what we went through. And he did that for us. So I think normalizing things, and you taught a class that I was in, and you spoke highly of not empathy or sympathy, but compassion.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that was so profound when you said that.
Yeah.
Because it's so different. Compassion is so different.
Yeah.
And so reflecting back over the last 6 years that I've done that, I think that is a gift that God gave me, with that compassion to hear people.
Yes.
and to give hope.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, that reminds me of the work of Brene Brown, which is a great author. And one of the things that she kind of dove into was the difference between empathy and compassion. And she basically was like, imagine you are down, in a ditch because of just terrible circumstances that you're in, and you feel so alone. You're scared. It's dark. There's no hope because you can't get up. And someone walks by and looks down and sees you in your despair and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you're there, man. Here's a rope if you want a rope." Just starting to offer like quick fixes and
right.
Offer these things. And so many times, sometimes I am at fault at like, oh, let me just fix this situation. When in kind of say empathetic words, but compassion is, oh, hey, hold on for 1 second, and climbing down or falling down into the well and be like, I got no words for you. I just want to sit with you. No one should do this alone. And I think what has the beauty of that is something that Henry Nouwen, he's no longer here, but he introduced this term called a wounded healer. And basically this whole idea is that we all have wounds, and what we do with those wounds can either breed bitterness or it could breed gratitude. And what we do with our wounds, do we hold on to them and we let it fester? And do we remain hurt and not move towards healing and play the victim all the time? Or can we get to a point of moving towards healing, whether that's therapy or being in a group or whatever that is? Because in the back of our heads would be like, I know I'm not the only one, and I want to be that person one day to see somebody who I was once in their shoes and say, come on, I got you. Let me jump in the well with you. I've been there before. And which is what you're doing. You've been there before. Yeah. And now you're able to see people in that woundedness that you've experienced. It's now bringing healing to other people. And that is the move from staying stuck and feeling like, this is my life, there's no hope for me, to, I wish that wasn't my life. I wish I wasn't hurt. I wish I wasn't taken advantage of. Well, I'm going to accept that is my lot, but I can be somebody who could protect others, and I can advocate for those who are in that situation. I could, so that's what a wounded healer is like. Yeah.
The thing that I tell people, because just being a one person doing the work, I have great donors and supporters and resources. That is a huge blessing. But when my husband will say, you need to say no. You do too much. Going back to that protector that you were talking about. Yeah. But I told him, I said, the thing that a lot of people don't realize, you see me sitting on the couch getting a text from an agency or a police department that needs help ASAP. Number one, if they've qualified the person, this new friend that we're going to help, I help them. There's no paperwork. There's tracking, of course, for the nonprofit. But he is always amazed that, like, within 6 or 8 minutes, we have the problem solved.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, but that 6 to 8 minutes of my time causes such a ripple effect because I've handed this person off to the right people that I trust.
Right.
And then, and we know when we're there for someone in crisis and we give them hope and they have something or they say, you care about me? You're sitting here with me?
Yes.
And of course I am, because someone sat with me at one time.
Yeah.
And we know that by doing that, we have such great success in meeting these people, bridging the gap. I always talk about Ezekiel 22, and don't call me out if I'm calling that wrong, about bridging the gap. When Jesus looked, or not Jesus, when God looked for people to fill the gap, and he found none.
Yes.
And a lady came up to me one time and she goes, you need to read Ezekiel 22. Just remember about bridging the gap. You're bridging the gap. And I think it's really, Jason, you know too, because you minister to so many people, that it's opening your eyes. And if you see somebody struggling, just say, hey, are you okay? Yeah. Or, last night I did a talk for 17 ladies talking about inner beauty and how that comes. Yeah. And I have a little donation box, and so they put money in there. And then first thing this morning, I was going to go to Hope Restored Mission, which helps the homeless. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know what? How about we take hot breakfast down there, And so I went in and I bought up all the breakfast pizzas and burritos that they had. Mm-hmm. I had $85, and, I spent, I think it was $50, $54 or something. And I saw there were still 2 people in line behind me. Mm-hmm. And God just said, you got a little more money, make their day, right? Wow.
Yeah.
So the first man, he was a young man, did not speak English at all. And he had some things up there, but they understand when you're handing money and smiling. Yes. The second one was a single mom with a small boy, and she was blown away. Mm-hmm. But, it's just kindness. It's just, that was God's money that was gifted to me.
Yeah.
That was for...
Yeah. What are you going to do with it? Yeah.
But what might have happened to the homeless person that ate the hot breakfast, or the young man I couldn't communicate with? What was going to happen in his day, and what was he going to pay forward or do differently because someone cared?
Yeah.
It doesn't take much.
What do you think is some of the greater, I don't know, like obstacles of, people are going to hear this story and be like, go for it. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's definitely, it sounds like it's a muscle that you've trained. It's either that or like you just got it, girl. And I'll just be very honest. Like, I don't have that. Like this bent towards like, oh, let me just, let me give back. And, like it takes a lot of effort on my end to get out of my head and to be like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. So what are like those common obstacles that you see, or what has been your obstacles back in, when you were developing this?
Right. Well, it's really, it's odd because recently I've done 4 magazine interviews, and that's always one of their questions.
Oh, really?
What's the hardship? What was the mountain you had to climb? And you know what? I just answer, there aren't any, because God is with me. Mm-hmm. Now, and remember, you're much younger than I am. I haven't always been this way. This has only come about in the last 6 years. Oh, and each year, it grows more and more. And I think that the Holy Spirit, I've been very much in tune to. I spend an hour and a half a day just in reflection, learning, getting closer to God, which a lot of people don't have time for that. But I'm going to be 60, so I've got some free time. But I think more than anything, I was very scared of the fundraising, and I didn't want to ask people for money. Mm-hmm. And my husband initially said, this is a great project, but we can't fund it, because I quit my job. Mm-hmm. And so I gave up my income to do this. Yes. But there has never been a dry well, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
And pretty much, I would just say in the last 18 months specifically, my eyes and my ears have changed.
Wow. What do you mean by that?
I mean that when I'm in a restaurant, maybe at lunch or something, I'm starting to look around. I'm assessing who's around me.
Right.
If somebody needs something. Mm-hmm. Or if I overhear somebody say something that is needs a response.
Yeah.
I have my gratitude hearts. I carry little crosses and different things. And there are many times I'm just compelled to go up to someone and just say, you know what? And I'll give you an example. I was at UT Southwestern dermatology, and there were two people sitting having a conversation, and I was by myself. And, it's hard not to overhear.
Sure.
I'm not going to say eavesdrop, but overhear the conversation. The one lady had just gone through breast cancer treatment, and then she was there with this gentleman that was having some skin cancer things removed. And I just walked over they called my name. And as I stood up, I just gave them each a cross and said, I just want to let you know, I heard your conversation. I'm sorry I did, but I just prayed for you. And I just wanted you to know that.
Wow.
And I think, Jason, removing the fear of what their response would be if they would have been offended or whatever.
Sure.
And only caring what God thinks.
Yeah. Right.
But I would just say that really the biggest thing in the beginning was I kind of beat myself up a lot because I would go past things that now I wouldn't have. So.
Interesting. Past people or just past things? Yeah, what do you mean by?
Well, so I didn't start working with the homeless community until about 2 years ago. And I would have never worked with the homeless community.
Right.
Until God said, guess what? Guess what road you're going down?
Yeah.
And literally, a girlfriend and I went to the first homeless outreach, and I gave bags of food, backpacks of food, and prayers. And that's all I said to my friend. I said, we're just going to pray. If anybody wants us to pray over them, that's what we're going to do.
Sure.
And not a person said, no, don't pray over me. Mm-hmm. And what I found that day is I was standing there and I looked to the right in this parking lot and I saw a folding lawn chair, a wheelchair, and a rolling grocery basket. Mm-hmm. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That's their living room. That's the kitchen.
Wow.
That's the bedroom where I'm going to, in 1 hour, go home, see all the food in my pantry, sit on my couch, and be in the air conditioning.
Yeah.
I'm so... just the alignment was, and to me, that is God saying, be grateful for what I've given you. Mm-hmm. But the thing, every single person we prayed over, and we prayed over them by name and specifically whatever they wanted us to pray for, almost every single one of them said, God is good. Mm-hmm. Nobody had a bad word to say about God or their faith. Right. And what I took away from that, Jason, was that many of us are too busy to be as grateful and faithful as some of our homeless friends.
Right.
Which was powerful to me.
Yes. That reminds me of John Mark Comer and his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And one of the things that he quoted, and I'm butchering it, but hurry is the antithesis of love. When's the last time you met a loving person who was in a hurry?
Uh-huh.
You don't. You can't find them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And it also reminds me of the class that we were in, how there's one part of the page where it was all about, we're talking about our giftings and our passions and where we think God is going to lead us to, and we're trying to figure out, what should I do with my life and what's my purpose? And there's this tagline of listen and obey.
Uh-huh.
And the instruction was like, if all you take away from these 6 weeks are those two words, listen and obey, you're already going to see how God is going to move in your life.
Yes.
And because I think whether we have been walking with Jesus for a long time or we've walked away altogether or wherever we're at, I think inside of us, there's something like some sort of inner voice or some sort of thought of like, go do that kind deed to that person or go do that. And we're like, oh, that would be nice. And then we just kind of move on with our life.
Yeah.
But what would our life look like? And this is what I think you are doing so beautifully is you're listening to that intuition. We would call it the voice of God.
Right.
Or at least the prompting of the Holy Spirit. Listen and then be like, okay, I'm going to go do it and see what happens.
Uh-huh.
And what I can say with confidence is that the more you do that with the little things that you obey to, the small whispers or intuition that you listen to, then God will entrust you with bigger things, and there could be bigger reward. And that reward is not necessarily more money or whatever it is, but there's a reward of greater fulfillment.
You
that
sleep at night.
Yeah, you can rest your head on the
knowing you did your best.
It's like, yeah.
I am, my poor husband will be in the grocery store, and he'll been up and down the aisles, and he turns to say something. And he's like, okay, she's gone. Where is she? And he'll find me in another row talking to an elderly person or a mom, But that's how powerful it is. And I do believe that listening and obeying, it's the key. And you talk a lot. And in our class, you had us get silent.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And I think that if more of us would do that, even if it's for 2 minutes, which would seem like an hour to somebody, but just try and get silent. And I think that I have a lot of spiritual growth to do yet.
Me too.
And I don't think we ever stop. But I think that the blessing of being able to go through Repurposed with you as my leader really was profound, because, and I think I've used that word 3 times, but it is powerful and profound that I already pretty well knew my purpose.
Right.
But the 2 words were so important to me.
Tell me more about, guide us. Just for our listeners' sake, this 6 weeks class, the whole point was to take an inventory of our stories, what we're passionate about, what we think we're gifted in, what we're burdened for, and to boil that all down to 2 words. And so yours is Hope Catalyst. Right. So what was so profound about boiling it down to that?
I think because I was so comfortable in grateful gratitude in the work I was doing, but I always knew that I needed that 30-second commercial, so to speak, because a lot of times you have somebody in front of you that could make a difference in your ministry or your nonprofit. And I needed those words, because I've had people tell me, oh, you're the eternal optimist, or, you're such a comforter. And, but I'm like, no, it's not that. And then people just start saying, you just bring so much hope. Number one, you don't hide any of your stories. You tell every story that you've been through, which are some doozies. And you bring hope because you survived it. And then I always knew that I was in between the person in need, the person in crisis, and where they needed to be. And so I always felt like I was a conduit. That was my word, conduit.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, conduit's okay. That just means you're kind of sitting there and you're holding 2 things together. I need more than that. I need movement. And so catalyst to me was like an action.
Yes.
So that's where it came from. But it was truly because, I had taken that years ago when we were in COVID. During the pandemic, we did the online learning at our church. And I did it. And I kind of just muddled through it, and I'm like, no, I need this filled. And so I think, if nothing else, the 3 words where you text or email a friend, family members and coworkers, which I didn't have coworkers, so I used co-partners.
Sure.
And when you hear those words back and what others see in you,
so surprising.
Told so many women, you need to do this. Just text, because you're going to be amazed at what people see in you.
Yes.
And then have the heart to send the 3 words back to them. And let them see what you see.
Yes.
So that's kind of...
Yeah, that's really cool.
So anyhow, I know we're going to run out of time here, but I want to know, will you come back again?
Sure, if you have me.
This has been awesome. And of course, we had 3 questions, but I told you at the very beginning, we're going to go wherever we're going to go. And it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. And I've worked with you about this much with some of our events.
Sure.
And I look forward to having you here more and just
Yeah.
really just, and maybe even having him one day.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She would be a joy.
Yeah. So until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching, and may you be blessed, and we will see you soon.